Alright everyone, welcome back again to more Misericorde Volume 2, White Wool and Snow. I honestly want to say guys that this will be the most interesting ep to me and probably to all of you too, just because of the fact that this particular part of the episode actually involves two perspectives this time. And without getting into any spoilers, they're both just as interesting, and if not a bit more so mysterious. But either way guys, you'll see what I mean in due time. And with that being said, I hope you all continue to enjoy. Thank you again for the love and support. And let's continue on. I think I need to take a short rest. I apologize. I realize I am lingering on details that might feel unimportant, meandering, adrift in the minutiae. This is rather difficult for me. I thought I was ready, but walking through all of this with you is making me feel ill at ease. I want to share my full story with you. I truly do. But some of it is too much to bear without assistance. You see, I'm beginning to realize that I might have to share some rather strange, embarrassing, awful details with you soon. Perhaps I've been navigating in circles to avoid getting to them. I put the foundations down for you at the very least. But before I continue, would you fetch me some wine? And chapter 6 complete. Thank you. I appreciate this very much. I really am not one for excess drinking, as you will soon understand. But the manner of story I will be telling you will require a little extra courage. By the time I'm good and tipsy, I'm sure you will understand. Should I be worried? Is the other question. I remember waking up to a knock at the door, although I do not remember falling asleep. I jerked up with a start, perhaps even a yelp, and nearly tripped as I stood out of bed. I had contorted myself into an uncomfortable position whilst dreaming. My robe had been hiked up between my legs awkwardly during my brief nap, and my arm had gotten caught in the folds of fabric. As I stumbled to my feet, I almost lifted my entire robe over my head. I was left awkwardly flattening my clothes when Eustace poked her head through my door. I didn't say you can come in. She spoke to me through the door, slightly muffled. Sorry. I was worried you'd fallen asleep. You guessed true, but still. Easy. I'm just excited. Are you ready for a treat? Well, I did leave a little room for fish. Good. Come on then. We can still catch the sunset if we leave now. I opened the door and she gestured for me to follow her, and then darted into her own doorway. She emerged a moment later carrying a traveler's bindle that looked rather heavy. Iron rods poked out of the fabric, and I could faintly smell cold fish as she brushed past me. She led me down the stairs and around the cloister to the western side of the abbey. I realized that we weren't too far from the spot where Darcy had watched me fall while walking around the side of the abbey walls. Daylight was rapidly fading, and I hoped that I wasn't about to trip and make the same embarrassing mistake in front of Eustace. Luckily, we stuck to flatter ground. It was a very pleasant evening, if a touch chilly. Our robes were hardly thin, but I would be grateful for a warmth of fire. Eustace stopped and began to brush aside tall grass with her feet. I realized that she had brought us to a circle of rocks and ash, somewhat obscured by overgrowth. Satisfied that she had cleared the campfire of grass, she set down her bindle and unraveled it. We laid out the fabric to use as a blanket, and Eustace set to work sticking the iron rods into the ground. What is that? A spit. It's how we'll cook the fish, but first. She produced another one of the tools she had brought, one that I recognized instantaneously. Do you know how to start a fire? Of course I do. I never would have survived winters in my cell without a hearth. She nodded and handed the flint and starter to me. Suddenly, eager to impress, I struck the two together above the wood. Eustace had been laying into the fire pit before her hands were even away. Careful. She yanked her fingers away as the spark lit the firewood. Sorry. She sucked on her fingers, then wiggled her wet hand in the air a bit with a slight grimace. Don't worry about it. I think you just got me with a spark. The fire crackled to life. I immediately felt a wash of comfort. Eustace set to much uglier work, putting one of the fish she had caught on the spit, which involved jamming one of the rods into its mouth and out the other end violently. I had secretly hoped that we would be cooking the kind of fish I was used to eating. A flat fillet, free of skin, bone, and eyes. Well, the eyes had been removed, I think. The dead fish was far too expressive either way. It would take some bravery on my part to eat anything once it was cooked. I would have to set my face like the flint I held, as it were. Eustace finished the grisly work and set the fish atop the spit. There we are. I pinched a little salt from the pantry as well. This would be very tasty. So, what have you been up to today? She spoke with a shrill and sincere chirp. Oh, well, not much, to tell you the truth. I've never really had a holiday. Not one where I had a choice of where to go and what to do, at any rate. I mostly just flitted about. I see. I spent some time with Margaret and Catherine, did a little writing in my room, walked the Abbey grounds a bit. Going fishing with you was the highlight, I think. Well, thank you. It's nice to know that I can be a decent company. She turned the fish idly. Do you like it here? That's a difficult question to answer. True enough, you experience a full range now, really. There are days where we do little work and then do as we please. And then there are days where we just do as we please. I realize your view of the whole thing might be a little marred by the unpleasantness, but I promise that it is rare. Rarer than rare, in fact. The truth is that without Catherine around, each day here is exactly the same. That's a rather large thing to be without. It is. But it was true before she went mad, and it will be true when all of this dies down. You've never said it quite like that before. You told me that she could not leave well enough alone or some such. But mad? It's hard to describe it any other way. Harsh certainty, but it's perhaps the most succinct explanation. One day she was Catherine, and the next day might be somebody else obsessed with something dark and terrible. And then eventually, the Catherine I knew, we all knew, was gone entirely. And now here we are. But in the grand scheme of things, days like those, they're just one bump in a long road. It's difficult for you to imagine having only been around for the bumps. But this is just a bump. Evenings like this. That's why this place is special. I know some of the others complain, but I wouldn't have it any other way. A quiet, pleasant life. A countryside holiday I could take until the world ended. What if all this evil remains? I feel like what you're saying is too easy for you. You haven't seen ghosts. You haven't been threatened. Well, I don't believe in ghosts. I'm quite comfortable in that. As should you be, I might add. But if there is something going on, I have no part of it, and I refuse to give it air. Let any would-be schemer scheme. It doesn't involve me, and if I don't tend their fire, it'll die out. Well, you were once the schemer, so... Again, She stoked the real fire somewhat pointedly. And if it doesn't? She peered at me through her big spectacles. The flames reflected in the glass, and it was difficult to read her expression. Then I'll have to leave. It won't come to that, I hope. Leave? Where would you go? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to leap into heavier conversation tonight. I think this one's almost done. I feel like, what's the point in bringing this topic up if you're gonna shut it down immediately the moment she starts questioning you? You know, let's go into this fully committed instead of just backpedaling. You know, you brought me here for this very situation. You wanted this to happen, so let's just have what is it called? Have it out. She took the fish off the spit and examined it. Ahoy! I whipped my head around in surprise. Adela was striding over to us with Darcy in tow. Eustace looked taken aback. We saw the fire and thought we would join you. Of course, feel free. There was that chirpy voice again. The fakeness. I was somewhat relieved to see that Adela and Darcy had brought extra provisions. I'm actually glad that, these two came along. Wine and salted meats and dried fruits and a handful of nuts. Food without eyes. They sat down with us in the large blanket. Darcy perched next to Eustace with a warm expression on her face. Adela shot me a knowing smile, but I was not exactly sure why. Wine was poured and idle chatter was made. Eustace's polite inquisition was put to the side for more frivolous, less ulterior gossip. The sherry. I hope one day Marta has to drink her finished slop. Years of work wasted because she would not listen to my advice. It is what she deserves. Aye. Well, let's not let people who aren't here ruin our night. True. Oh, it does not ruin my night to complain. I love to complain. Hedwig, this is something you will learn about me. I suppose I just did. She took a big swig from her cup of wine and giggled, splashing some red juices onto her wimple. Let's say temple. This is nice. Good time for it. Won't be long until the snow. Yes, that's what made me think about doing it. It'll be coming any day now. Adela groaned and flopped onto her back dramatically. Fucking snow. I miss Zahara. Don't we all? Where's Zahara? Iberia. Adela shot back up, clearly offended. Spain. I'm not trying to get political. Hedwig, Zahara is the most beautiful city in the world. The hills. They're so much prettier than our hills. The food is tastier than any food you could have here. And the weather. Zahara is so warm year-round, you could live comfortably without clothes for the rest of your days. The streets are clean and the buildings are so bright you can see at night. I had no idea what to say. Adela feels very strongly about Castillo's claims in Andalusia. No, she's wrong, Hedwig. I only care about being able to live somewhere nice. We do live somewhere nice. It isn't so bad. The view's nice sometimes. Darcy said this looking straight at Eustace, who cleared her throat with a sheepish smile. That is true. Adela said this looking straight at me, and I cleared my throat with a sheepish smile. I tried to say thank you, but instead made a sort of clucking sound with my dry throat. I glanced over at Darcy and Eustace and was surprised, but not shocked. No, not anymore, to see their mouths locked in a passionate kiss. Adela put her hand on my knee and smiled wryly. I smiled back, unsure of what to say. Goodness, it's getting late, is it not? The others all looked at me in surprise. Adela looked wounded. It is barely past sundown. Was it something I said, Sister Hedwig? I hope you all don't mind if I turn in early for the night. We all had a long and exciting holiday after all. With that, I stood up and toddled away. My body wouldn't walk straight forward. Hedwig! Sister Hedwig! I turned around to smile and wave. Truly, I did not feel angry with Adela. Aquinas had warned me about the homosexual male, but the female was a different beast altogether. We had no seed to spill. I crested the stairs in a mighty huff. Still though, surely touching each other for pleasure was sinful nonetheless. Were the women in the Misericorde right now acting just as debauched? If I opened that door, would I see naked bodies entangled in shameful acts? No wonder this building was crumbling. No wonder devils and ghosts lurked in dark corners. No wonder the superior had called these women sodomites. I felt dizzy and staggered to the stone railing to right myself for a moment. Had my naivety denied me heaven? Was half a second of a woman's hand brushing against my knee enough to send me to hell? I sobbed quietly for a while. This wine you brought me is serving me quite well. Goodness, I'm amazed I got through all of that without mispronouncing something. I mean, I thought it was going to be a bit more embarrassing for you, but so far it wasn't bad at all. Mispronouncing. That's a funny word if you think about it, isn't it? No, I'm happy to keep talking about it. This is why I'm back in my cell after all. Well, mostly. But I'll happily talk about it with the right amount of lubrication. I might need more to drink eventually, but... No, I'm comfortable. I'm in my cell. So, either by the end of this story, she ends up going back to her cell voluntarily? Really? I mean, okay. This is where I belong, so I can't do any of all that anymore. You see, I'm just getting started. I mean, if you know me, and you're someone I know, then I'm sure you knew about some of this, but I promise there is so much more that I did. Because you know why I'm here. You know that wasn't the end of any of that, and you know very well that I'm back in here for my own good. Because the worst part of all of this is yet to come. And do you know how I know where I'm looking? Where I belong? Because when I was crying then, I think I might have embellished in my written notes, because when I was crying then, I think between you and me, I was crying because I wanted more. And from then on, my dark desires became incredibly distracting. Oh, what a useless sod I was. One small trick from the devil was all it took to send me spiraling. At the time, I really did try. I was so convinced I was not tempted by avarice, but looking back, I was. I was. Oh, okay, so there was more. I was about to say, I'm like, that wasn't so bad. If you were just uncomfortable and you didn't want to be a part of it, that's fine, you know? Like, I didn't think that was anything to be ashamed of. Like, you know, if you're not ready for that, or if you just don't want to, you're perfectly within your right to just, you know, walk away from it. Let them have their fun. But it seems like, based on her current dialogue, she you know, did more. I guess we'll see. As I wept on the landing, I told myself that I would get to work in earnest the next day, and indeed I did, as I will detail for you. But it wasn't enough. I know what you're thinking. Where is this all going, Hedwig? Why are you dwelling on all this, Hedwig? Closing myself off in my cell isn't enough. I need to enumerate and account for all my sins, because sin I did, over and over, unwillingly and willingly. I was being torn in half slowly by different people, different goals, different thoughts inside my own head. And it made me stupid. Far too stupid to solve any mystery. And now here I am. So, you didn't resolve the situation? Like, you're in the cell right now and everything is still unsolved mysteries? People are dead because of me. I think. Now might be a good place for us to rest. I ought to get some sleep. I'm tired, and the worst is yet to come. If you would be so kind, would you bring me more wine tomorrow? Ah, okay. Okay. Obviously, she's telling this to a guest that's, like, visiting her. There are more difficult subjects yet to come, and my throat is rather dry. See, the way I was picturing it before she detailed it was, I naturally assumed she was just speaking metaphorically to, obviously, us, the reader, but she was really speaking to a visitor that was checking out her cell. Okay. We're back on it again. Thank you. Tomorrow, then. I'll be here. Heh. I'll be here. That was quick. What the hell? The flight was uneventful. Turbulence my butt. The only thing of note was how goddamn boring it was. I can't believe people do that shit all the time. I'd kill myself. Wait a second. Is the character that's narrating right now the same character from the secret scene in Volume 1? And is this character going to be one of the new oblets? I tried falling asleep even, but it just wasn't happening. The engines were too loud and the recycled air gave me a headache. That rich lady who sat next to me got absorbed in a book after we took off too, so I had nobody to talk to. Oh, it is that character. Okay. Not that I wanted to spend much more time talking to her. I had gotten a real strange feeling from her whole deal. When we landed, she thanked me again for finding her bag and reminded me not to spend all that cash she had given me in one place. Then she got up and left with the first-class passengers. Not sure why they let her. I guess she did have a first-class look. Anyway, I was running on fumes by the time I picked up my luggage and made my way to the outside of the terminal. I'd heard a lot of bad shit about Heathrow while planning my trip, but honestly, it didn't feel much different from JFK. Maybe I was too tired to notice, but it just looked like any other big airport. Gray, miserable, full of people ready to fall apart any second. I stood on the sidewalk, pavement, and tried to hail a cab or bus or whatever I could find. Yellow. Hi, can you take me to Limbarrow? Limbarrow? Are you having a laugh? No. In the back of my head, I've been worried about this. Limbarrow Abbey, the whole mountain really, had a reputation for being haunted. I guess some superstitious folks would want to take me there. That's almost in bloody Scotland. Yeah. England's like small though, isn't it? Not that small, sweetheart. I have a wife and kids to go home to. Alright then. Thanks. He tipped his hat to me and pulled ahead to the next customer. Weird lady, need a ride? I jumped. This chick again. I had last seen her at the fast food joint before my flight, and now she was bugging me on the sidewalk? Or pavement? Okay, this character has to be that other secret character from Volume 1. Like that weird one. I don't know. Whatever, exactly. Yeah, I do. Fuck, you scared the shit out of me. Saz. She put 2 fingers between her candy-colored lips and let out a whistle so piercing I had to cover my ears. A powder blue car emerged from around the corner. It looked a bit beaten up, and the diesel smell became overpowering as it approached the curb. Another guy in a tweed jacket was behind the wheel. Evening, ladies. My friend here needs a ride to Limbarrow. Would you be so kind? Of course. How'd you know I was going to Limbarrow? I heard you, silly. How'd you know I was going to Limbarrow? You just have that look about you. The man chuckled and wagged his finger at my strange benefactor. Fair's fair. Look, I don't want to sound rude, but I don't want to get murdered. You can trust him. Isn't that right, Jim? That's right. I'm a happily married man. Love. Oh, I'm a happily married man, love. I was about to say, like, what? Wife would kill me if she caught so much as a whiff of funny business. I mean, sure. Okay. Like that's gonna convince anyone? It was all a bit difficult to believe, but I looked between my mysterious friend and the man in the car and felt oddly calm. I had this weird feeling of, like, it all making sense. If that makes sense. Maybe the woman's using some sort of magic to calm her down. I feel like that could be the case too. Jim turned to the other woman. Do you need a ride as well? Who, me? Oh no, I have a meeting in London. Alright then. What's your name, miss? I waited for a second because I thought he was talking to her, but then realized she had already slipped away. Alex. Just Alex? Yeah. Do you need help with your luggage? I noticed him glancing down at my leg as I walked toward the car. Nah, thanks. I fiddled with the trunk. Sorry, boot. And opened wide. There was just enough room between some covered wooden boxes and dirty farming implements to stop my case. I slammed the boot shut and walked to the front seat. I hope you know it'll be a bit of a drive. That's okay. I closed the door inside, settling into a seat cushion. The leather seats were discolored and fraying, and there was dirt tracked all through the car, but compared to the airline, it was practically a spa. The car began to shudder, and we pulled away from the curb. I was so tired. I felt bad because this guy was being really nice driving me all the way to Limbarrow, but he was so focused on getting out of Heathrow that I didn't see a good gap to say anything, and then... By the time he realized it, you're in Limbarrow? I woke up slowly to the calming sounds of rubber on road. Oh god, how long was I asleep? A few hours, and a couple more to go, I'm afraid. No problem. Thanks for doing this, by the way. How did you know her? Who, your friend? Don't know her at all. Wait, really? But she flagged you down. Just luck, I suppose. I was driving to the airport for some reason or another, and heard her whistle, and now here I am. See, does that make any sense? Huh. Well, thanks. Not at all. Where are you from? Ugh. The States. No offense, miss, but I figured that out. Whereabouts in the States? New York. City? Yeah. That's nice. Always wanted to visit the East Coast. Got a few friends there. A few in Boston. Not sure I'll ever get on a plane, though. New York's cool. I mean, it sucks, but it's cool. Oh yeah? How's that? Well, the city is mad dirty, and the drivers are all assholes, but the people are cool. Except the drivers. Yeah. Right. Sorry, I'm still a bit tired. No need to apologize, miss. You a punk? You ever go to, what's it? Heebie-jeebies? CBGB? That's the one. God, no. That place stopped being cool ages ago. Shows what I know. I think anywhere you might have heard of, I'd avoid. Not like because of you, just, you know. If it's broken containment. He laughed and shook his head. Broken containment. Blow me down. My son was a bit of a punk for a while. I picked a few things up. Yeah? That's cool. Apparently not. I felt bad, but he was still laughing. I guess you could take a joke. You remind me of him a bit. My wife hated that stuff, but I tried some of it out, you know? Wanted to connect with him. That's sweet. See, I thought so too. It took me a while to winnow down. Thought. Bought him a Sex Pistols record and he tossed it right in the bin. They kind of suck. Told you sounded like him. Took me a while to find something he liked. It's hard to find real punk. I'll be honest, it all sounded the same to me. But I'd know the difference if I was closer to it, I suppose. Yeah. Plus, the English stuff is a bit different from the American punk in it. Definitely. Hardcore is basically totally different from UK stuff. He chuckled to himself. Just like him. Blow me down, I say again. What brings you here then, if not our thriving punk rock community? I'll be honest, I still wasn't totally sure I could trust this guy. He was pretty charming and doing me a massive favor, but it was beginning to hit me just how weird the situation was. Then again, we had a long way to go, and I didn't really feel like making the rest of the ride awkward. I wanted to visit the Abbey. Lynbarrow. Yeah. You a history buff, or one of them superstitious types? Dunno. Both maybe. Oh, so she's not an oblit? Plus, I'm kinda doing some family tree research type stuff. Going quite a way back then. You reckon you got royalty in there or something? So, hold on a second. Could this aspect be taking place in the future? And the story we're currently going with Hedwig is in the past? Is that what it is? Maybe. Wouldn't really care if I did. Everyone does, more or less. Doesn't mean much. Doesn't mean anything. Now drink to that. Doesn't matter much to me what the queer old dean does. I couldn't help but laugh. You know? Like, dear old queen. I got it. Don't go telling anyone I said that, of course. If I visit London on the way back, I'll be sure not to tell any of the fuzzy hat guys. I take it you know all about the royal business at the Abbey then? A bit. It's kinda why I wanted to come. Ah, so you're one of those types. Superstitious. Conspiratorial. Maybe a little. It is an odd place, I'll give you that. Odd history. Yeah. You a historian at all? Not really. I'm curious, but not an expert. I really want to see it for myself, though. You staying in the village? I assume so. I hadn't thought that far ahead. There's a couple of pubs and inns. Of course, you could stay with me and the missus if you'd like. Save a few quid. Yeah? I'd appreciate that. I was used to couch surfing. Plus, even with the money that lady had given me for finding my bag, I wasn't exactly loaded. Your wife won't mind? Nah. She might give me some lip about it, but there'll be no trouble. She thinks I'm soft. Yeah? I guess you seem pretty nice. Well, thank you, young lady. Catch more flies with honey, that's always been my motto. You get a lot of visitors then? We see enough. It's not a busy town, but it attracts a lot of travelers and tourists. Lots of people going to Edinburgh or Newcastle and so on. Or the Isle of Man. Bit of a midpoint for a lot of things. All that plus the occasional curious type like yourself. The Abbey attracts some weird folk. Present company excluded, of course. I guess it is pretty weird to fly all the way to another country to see a haunted abbey. Haunted? Goodness me. Maybe. I don't know about haunted, but I shouldn't like to stay at the night there, I'll say that much. The village is weirder than the abbey, if you can believe it. Had one of them dancing diseases once upon a time. Dancing disease? Don't know what else you'd call it. I wanted to hear more about this, but it was starting to get dark. My eyes started to close and then I drifted off again. Yeah, I don't know. Like, it seems like the driver is pretty trustworthy, but at the same time, the moment he invited her, I was like, Arr. The sound of the car door slamming woke me up soon after. Here we are. It took me a second to fully wake up. I staggered out of the car to get my suitcase before Jim could help. We were in an English village, all right. Small brick houses dotted the narrow road. I could see little farms in the distance. There were Tudor buildings and thatched roofs all around. Take that inside and I'll introduce you to the wife. I lugged my suitcase to the small front gate of the house and knocked on the door. I heard loud footsteps. After a moment, a woman answered the door. She was fat, middle-aged, and dressed in an old floral print frock. Oh, not again, James. All I could do was smile. I didn't know what to say. Found her at the airport. She's here to visit the Abbey. Offered her a ride and a place to stay. Save some cash, you know? Mary seemed to relax. Oh, well, if that's all. I was worried you were in another one of his collaborators. Shush, woman. I was worried I was about to be stuck in the middle of a tense couple's argument, but Jim and his wife were both smiling, broadly as they ushered me inside. Jim kissed her and shut the door behind us. I just like lending a hand, you know how it is. Your big heart's gonna land us in the news one of these days. You'll have to go elsewhere for tea, I'm afraid. I ate with the seagulls earlier. No trouble. I'll fix myself something and I imagine our friend here will probably want to head to the pub. Oh, yeah, sure. Just leave your things by the sofa there. You sound American. Long flight? Do you fancy a shower? Actually, yeah, if that's okay. Upstairs and in the hall. I opened my suitcase and retrieved a fresher t-shirt, then headed up the narrow stairs. It was crazy to me how much smaller English houses were. Jim and Mary seemed to have made it the best of it, though. It was a fine place, just cramped. Cozy, I guess you'd call it. There were photos all along the hallway walls. A younger and thinner Mary. A few cute pictures of her and Jim as a couple in what looked like the 60s. A wedding photo. A photo of Mary holding a baby. There were a few gaps in between those and more recent photos. And then right by the bathroom. Fucking cool. Here were pictures of Jim in uniform. I felt kinda stupid. I should immediately realize from his age that this guy would have fought in World War II. I had to admit, he looked pretty good in uniform back then. He was still stocky then, but his uniform couldn't hide the muscles he used to have. There was one picture in particular that stood out. Jim standing in front of a destroyed German car, grinning wide. The car was charred and smoking. Lucky grenade toss. Jesus! Sorry about that. Just wanted to give you a fresh towel before you got in the shower. He handed me the towel, then pointed at the photograph. 4 officers in that car. We weren't even supposed to be there. I would have been in a heap of trouble if it hadn't been such a good throw. Did you kill a lot of people? Loads, probably. Nazis, of course. I was in explosives artillery, and the like, so I couldn't give you an id count. Potters did that lot, though. Get lost in patrol thanks to some spy directions from HQ, saw a fancy car flanked by a couple of trucks, and thought, well, if it's not the Fuhrer himself, it's probably someone important. Lobbed the grenade over the hill, and then he imitated the sound of the explosion. Never saw it coming. And by the time the blokes escorting them noticed, we were on them with rifles. I wasn't much of a war nerd, but this story was cool. That's awesome. And now half the cars in the village are German. Anyway, get clean and head down to the pub if you like. Take in the local color. They'll get a kick out of you, I'm sure. He shuffled off, leaving me to wonder exactly what he meant by that. Their shower wasn't exactly accessible, but I made do. I had to lean my leg up against the toilet. Sorry, loo. While I hopped into the small tub, I leaned against the wall. Once I had freshened up a bit, I put my leg back and headed downstairs. Mary was sitting at the small kitchen table drinking some tea. Jim was resting on the sofa, looking very relaxed and taking in the evening news. He glanced up as I came down the stairs. Freshened up? Yeah, thanks. No bra? Let her be, Mary. It's the punk look. I couldn't help but laugh. I pack light. Well, have fun then. Where's the pub? Pub sounds so strange in your accent. Take a right out the door and walk down the main street. It's called the Bear and Arms. Can't miss it. Cool, thanks. I stepped down to the cool evening air and walked down the hill toward what looked like a main street. It felt weird walking on cobblestones. There are a few streets and alleys like that in New York, but I'd never seen this much. It was kind of hard not to feel like I was on a different planet or some kind of time traveler. Every now and then I'd catch the hook from a more recent pop song drifting out of the house or passing Cars radio, but I swear otherwise I could have been convinced I'd stepped into 1950. I found the pub Jim had suggested and dipped inside. There were a few pubs on the street that had looked a bit livelier than this one. There was barely anyone in here. Hell, maybe that's why he suggested it. I was still pretty wiped from travel. The lights were dim, the small television hanging from the corner of the bar was the brightest thing there. It was playing a show, program, starring some guy running around with a vegetable pinned to his suit. Very weird. The bartender nodded idly at me as I walked in. I chose a table in the dark in the corner away from the handful of patrons seated at the bar and sat down. I took a closer look at the folks sitting in the bar. An old guy who looked just like Jim, an older guy who looked like Jim in 10 or 20 years, and... Fancy seeing you here. This was starting to get freaky. Before I could say anything, she stood up and walked over to join me. She had changed into new clothes, super out of place. She was wearing heels and this tight, high-waisted skirt and a billowy silk top. She looked like when bad guys in movies have evil secretaries. When she sat down, I noticed that she was wearing a big square of glasses underneath her bangs. No idea if those were new or if I just never noticed them. How did she see with her hair down like that all the time anyway? Fucking weird. She had been reading a novel before she had noticed me, which she set down on the table with a thump. How was the journey? No traffic, I hope. It was fine. How did you get here? Same way you did, silly. The motorway. Yeah, but, like, before me? I thought you had a meeting in London. I did. I don't know. I drive fast. Jim was nice. Behaved himself. Yeah. How do you know him again? Just a friend. He said he didn't know you at all. Ha! Maybe he forgot little old me. Or maybe he didn't recognize me. He's done a few favors for me. Sure. For work? That's right. He's interesting, isn't he? I guess so. I saw his World War II stuff. Kind of a character. Not half. Sorry, you said he's done favors for you? Like what? Help me with research. Oh, for books and stuff. Mm-hmm. I can smell inaccuracies a mile away, but it's great knowing someone who was there to help sort through what matters and what doesn't. It's probably not going to ruin anything if a soldier says some slang from the 50s, but I wouldn't want to see a color TV in a World War II story. Feels a bit obvious. You'd be surprised. Did you know people only started saying hello in the 1800s? Huh? What did they say instead? Depends on where and when. Naturally. Anyway, things like this start getting quite granular, so part of my job involves doing research, or finding people who can do the research. But the funny thing is, they'll often have conflicting ideas or opinions on which bits need to be accurate. You'd be surprised how much can slide before the audience starts considering something purely fictional. So I make a lot of editing calls. Yes, you can have a teensy supernatural element here. No, you can't have that model of watch in 1968, and so on. What's funny is that everyone is constantly changing their minds too. It's all a bit like herding cats. Finally, a straight-ish answer. That actually makes sense. You made it sound all mysterious for a while. I do my best. Anyway, are you staying with him and Mary? How do you know all this stuff? Just guessing. He's the generous type. It's easy to guess these things if you know enough about someone. His son was a bit like you. I figured he'd hit it off with you. Okay, maybe not so straight an answer. This is getting creepy. I agree. This is too weird. You keep meeting her everywhere. It's almost like she's stalking you. Did you meet his son? No. Interesting. She picked up her book and flicked through the pages. I realized that I had no cover. It was a plain white dog-eared paperback. After finding whatever she was looking for, she produced an expensive-looking pen and circled something. Sorry, am I boring you? Oh no, I apologize. I'm just checking something. I have to finish my notes on this by morning. What is it? A thriller. A bit of an airport paperback really, but it's quite fun. What's it about? She put the novel down, folded her arms over it, then leaned forward with an excited grin. So it's this espionage story, yeah? It starts in the 70s, but covers a large span of time. Downing Street palace intrigue, and so on. There's an attempt on the Prime Minister's life, and the spies and the detectives and stuff, they have no idea who it was. They profile the usual types, you know? Lefty minorities, they get nowhere. Turns out, it was a bunch of retired farmers who were in cahoots with the IRA. Then what happens? That's it. That's the twist. Oh. That sounds fucking boring. Ah, right. You're not a big fan of fiction, I remember. I mean, sure, but I go to the movies and watch TV sometimes. I'm not a robot. That just barely sounds like a story. That's just a long article. Well, it hasn't happened. Sure. But it could, right? Like, I could imagine flipping on the news and hearing that basically word for word. Well, I think for some people that's part of the fun. Not for me, I guess. Nothing wrong with that. She drummed her fingers on the table. Weird lady. Drinks, what would you like? Cider, I guess. She stood up and walked over to the bar. I swear she was exaggerating her hip swaying if that's not too weird to say. I only bring it up because she also left the book on the table. I felt like I was being toyed with. I glanced between the book and the strange woman. I was thinking, how long will her order take? I wouldn't care about a boring spy novel normally, but I don't know, an advanced copy of a book? I'd be curious about an unpublished textbook if I'm being totally honest. You know, like if a button has a sign that says do not press, I'm pressing that button. So I picked up the book and... Are you kidding me? Don't do that to me. Oh, don't tell me to get back to work. Don't do that. I was so into that. That was a really interesting chapter. Oh, don't give me that. Oh, you're back. No, fuck you. No, bring me back there. I want that story. I want to continue that one. I want to continue Alex's story. Not that Hedwig is boring or anything, but I was enjoying that one. Alright, fine. Ah, you're back. Prompt. Perhaps a little too prompt. It is rather early. I'm ready, I think, to continue. I slept well. Thank you for asking. I didn't ask, but okay. Did you bring me any wine? Good. Pass it through. Where did I leave off exactly? Ah, yes. I was leaning against the railing, contemplating my life after a dramatic exchange next to the bonfire. Sister Hedwig. I remember waiting on the landing for a while, sniffling like a foolish child. I'm quite well, I assure you. No, you are not. I must apologize. I felt like we might have known enough about each other. She approached me with a look of grave concern. I scarcely know you, and I'm not certain I'll ever know anyone enough for whatever that was. I can see that it was far too much for you. For me? For anyone, Adela? You have much to atone for if that sort of thing is a regular activity for you. Sister Hedwig, is this common? Is this expected here? Expected is such an odd word to use. Nothing is expected of you, Hedwig. I find you rather sweet. I want to express such. As flattered as I am to hear that, but perhaps words could suffice for now. I understand. I'll never put you in that position again, Sister Hedwig. Or anyone. She cackled in a manner I'd never heard from her before. I respect you, Sister Hedwig, but you are not my mother. I was not prepared to argue with her. I knew, as I recently alluded to, that I could not quote specific scripture to make my argument, but by God, I could rebuke any selfish worldly Gnostic or otherwise hedonistic offense she could muster. I don't know. Should we be touching each other so affectionately? With such intent? Is it holy? I do not care. Any offense but that. What? I don't care, Sister Hedwig. Do you think I'm worried about hell? Adela! I'm mortified that I upset you, but that is where my shame ends. You are in the real world, Sister Hedwig, and people have wants and needs. Just because you want something, do you not think I'm capable of managing my desires? I want so much more than to touch knees, Hedwig. I want a different life. I could walk right out of the Abbey tomorrow if I thought it was a good idea, but I do not. I am here because unfortunately it is the best place for me to be right now. I have important work to do. I have sherry to make, and I do believe in God strongly enough to have taken my vows willingly. But I do more work in God's name than most everyone on earth. Everyone here does, Sister Hedwig, and so does everyone in monastic service. When my time comes, I can only hope my devotion speaks for itself. If a few liaisons send me back, so be it. But I am not wanton. I'm done the calculus, and I would expect you to know better than to judge me. You know who the only one who may judge us is. I felt thoroughly rinsed. Damn straight, man, she dressed you down. Perhaps I could have argued, but I had no energy to, and I had a humiliating desire deep within myself to agree. To let go of my pretensions, to lay on the floor and invite Sister Adela to get on with it. I would have liked nothing more, truth-told, and it made me feel ill. All I could do was maintain my shape. I had to be Sister Hedwig. I had to be pious, self-righteous, a little stupid. Black bile poured into a woman-shaped mold, in danger of melting in the daylight. If I gave in to my basest desires, as Adela had convinced herself was fair, I would cease to be anything at all. I felt so strongly that if I allowed myself to be touched in that manner, I would fall apart, and the pieces would reform into something bestial. No longer the woman Hedwig, but a nameless animal who would eat anything put in front of it and bounce from desire to desire with no guilt or shame. No soul. Just pleasure. Just sin. I'm sorry, Sister Hedwig. I should not have been so rude. I know you did not mean any insult. I should be apologizing to you as I intended in the first place. Don't mention it. We can put this behind us? Of course. I won't judge you for your proclivities. I must rest. I've had a long and strange day. I understand. I felt the need to soften the blow of our argument. It is embarrassing, truly, how readily I relaxed. You know, you weren't the first to touch me today. No? No. Someone else saw me disrobe as well. She raised an eyebrow, looking rather unsure of herself. I relished it. Oh. Then, wait. Who bested me? Darcy. Though it was really an accident. And then Catherine caught me naked after that. Again, an accident. A long and strange day indeed. Well, if you do not mind my saying so, I suppose I must hope to one day stumble into such an accident myself. What? Oh. I'm going to rejoin the others. See you tomorrow, Sister Hedwig. Goodbye, Sister Adela. That was such a mature way to handle that, too. Respect. I apologize. Discussing this is difficult for me. I mean, if you want to get real technical, Adela can't really judge her either, because Hedwig was always inside her cell, just reading scripture this whole time. So she's kind of sheltered from the actual realities of the world. Until now. I suppose it isn't going to get any easier, is it? No. Excuse me, I must retrieve my cup. I dropped it. Ah, there we are. I suppose I have a small reprieve now. Because as I watched Adele disappear down the stairs, I resolved myself to get some real work done. Awesome. I dashed to my dorm room to open my new workbook. I closed my door and hastily procured a quill and ink from the writing desk drawer. If I had disappointed God by letting my guard down around these women, I would please him by showing true commitment to my calling, here and now. I flipped to the first blank pages and spread the book flat on the desk and got to work. It was time to start committing things to ink so I could not forget them. I copied the same map that I had drawn previously, but this time I began adding little figures around the abbey. It was time to work out exactly what happened the morning Catherine's murder was discovered. The body was in the middle of the cloister. Charity discovered her first. Angela and the Superior were having a meeting in the office. They would have been alerted by Sister Charity. The Superior aroused Moira and Eustace first, while Angela began searching for the culprit. And then Eustace and Moira carried the body into the chapel to be examined. James had arrived to make deliveries that morning and would have been in Sister Catherine's bedroom at the time. But then Angela did find them hiding later, so... Darcy saw a fire? Was attending to a fire? Or was that Eustace? I frowned. I was already beginning to forget critical details. Determined to make progress, I revisited the notes I had just written. Charity discovered her first. Simple enough to confirm, I suppose. I made a note to ask Charity about it directly. Angela and the Superior were having a meeting in the office. What had they done when Charity alerted them? Then I realized, was it Charity who alerted them? If I could confirm that, it would confirm Charity's story. Simple connections I could build a bridge to the truth out of. The Superior aroused Moira and Eustace first, while Angela began searching for the culprit. Is what happened. I could ask Moira and Eustace how they heard the news. And then Eustace and Moira carried the body into the chapel to be examined. I could ask about that too, I suppose. I furrowed my brow. I'd have to ask Catherine about James as well. I was losing concentration quickly. And worse, I was beginning to develop a sinking feeling that I was walking in circles right back to where I had started the minute I had left my cell. How could I ask any of these questions without tipping everyone off to exactly what I was doing? Who could I trust to answer these inquiries in good faith? I groaned aloud and slammed my quill into the desk. This was my lot in life, to do a lot of work and achieve nothing at all. Was there really no foothold I could find? I considered my questions and notes once more. Eustace had already determined exactly what my goal was. It would put her guard up and she would be upset that I had broken my promise to her, but I could at least ask her these questions without giving myself away. Or perhaps I did not need to break any more promises. Eustace had asked for 1 week. I could at least appear to honor that for Eustace. And in the meantime, I could employ subterfuge to ask some of these other questions. Catherine meant so much to everyone here. Surely I could find a way to innocently get this information out of my peers without seeming nosy. I cared about Catherine just as much as they did. She had come to my hagioscope many times. Her loss moved me, just as much as it moved them. 1 week. One more week of dishonesty, of white lies and prying questions. And then I could ask Eustace directly about whatever contradictions I discovered. Feeling somewhat satisfied, I sighed and closed the book. It had been a long day and I was still reeling from Adela's touch. I stood up to strip for bed and fell into my pillow. 1 week. One more week of calculated sin. I could manage that. Hedwig? Huh? Did you have a fun night with Eustace? I wasn't sure how late you stayed up, so I just wanted to collect you for service. Thank you. I left out of bed and dressed quickly, then joined Moira in the dorm hall. We started walking down the chapel. It was a bright, crisp morning. The others were slightly ahead of us. How was the Misericorde last night? Rather boring, to tell you the truth. Or, not boring I suppose, but without Adela there to be competitive, the chess was a bit staid. Catherine got very drunk and started complaining about how good things used to be, and Charity and Marta kept to themselves in the corner of the whole evening. I got stuck listening to Flora talk about Inferno again. How about you? I wish I could have had some fish, to be honest. I love a bit of fresh fatty bream. Oh, it was pleasant. Hedwig, you sound evasive. Do I? I'm just tired. Very well. Does she know? We arrived at the chapel. It was actually something of a relief to see the superior back up at the pulpit after a tumult of the last few days. I could not be too relaxed, however. Adela shot me a knowing smile when our gazes met across the aisle, and the glint of Flora's metal boot kept getting in my eyes as the sun moved across the windows. The bishop, too, was seated for service. He looked rather bored, but perked up when things concluded. Now then, these have been a stressful handful of days, but I believe in second chances and moving forward as a family. And what better way for a family to bond than to welcome new members? Sometime today, should the last letter I receive be marking time accurately, 2 new oblates will be arriving. I expect you all to make them feel welcomed and help them integrate into our little abbey. While I would normally say show them how we do things here, I think you all know that the way things are done here could be vastly improved. So I will ask you all humbly, do not settle for your worst. Let us consider this an opportunity to set an example not just for our new sisters, but for ourselves. We can show them how things should be done here, and how they will be done here. Do you all understand? As per usual, a mildly agreeable murmur went around the room. Very good. She gestured to the bishop, who stood up to take the pulpit. I would like to thank you all for welcoming me into your home as always. Visiting Limbarrow is a unique pleasure that cannot be overstated. I heard a stifled chortle. Catherine and Margaret were elbowing each other. There is, of course, a sense of tragedy hanging over this visit. The loss of one sister, Catherine, who was, of course, an indispensable and cherished member of this congregation. I have been in talks with your superior, the diocese, and some anonymous benefactors, and I am delighted to announce that we will finally be able to perform some renovations to the abbey grounds. Another murmur. This is a lovely place, but it's a touch drafty, is it not? Crumbling walls, aged paths, unfinished additions to the campus. But most of all, I am thrilled to share that I have secured the funds to not only finish the repair of this place. The diocese has agreed to fund the repair and completion of the ill-fated clock tower that currently lies in the ruins next to the chapel. There was a horrible sound of wood scraping on stone as Eustace shot upward onto her feet so violently it moved the whole pew. Sister, Eustace? Nothing. That is, just excellent news. Yes, I explained to the diocese and our financier that the clock tower would be a wonderful way to honor your departed sister Catherine. Okay. Eustace is hiding something by the clock tower, isn't she? I hear she was quite passionate about the first project. Perhaps we can name the new one for her in order to preserve her memory. As for her killer, he will be returning with me to the diocese to await his punishment. As the superior told you, I think this is a wonderful opportunity for a new beginning. Uh-oh, you were about to slip, dude. New oblates around the repairs in the abbey. Truly, this place can shine as a beacon on the mountain for all travelers who pass through the cold north. Eustace's hand shot up. Sister Eustace? That's a good point. It's rather late in the year to be starting construction work, is it not? It is indeed. Luckily, our benefactors have graciously paid for new stone to be cut and transported here, and for labor costs. With any luck, the tower will be completed before any snow begins. That's absurd. It is extremely generous, yes. They are prepared to work through inclement weather as well. Surely it is already too cold for Limus. I've been assured the workers will know what to do to get the tower erected quickly. Workers? Well, of course. Where are they going to stay? They'll be making camp outside of the abbey. I vehemently disagree with this decision. The bishop looked toward the superior confused. I am well aware that nobody enjoyed having workers interrupting our daily lives. Catherine did, if I recall. Why is it that you disagree with the decision so vehemently, Upset that Catherine II gets a building named after her before you? How many laborers are you hoping to host in your bedroom? Will you run through them one at a time or pick just one to keep as a pet? Whoa. Catherine stood up, but the superior and the bishop shouted in unison. Enough. I must admit, I am surprised by this reaction. I really think this is a bad idea. It's too cold to build anything right now. Shut up, Eustace. They should at least wait until after the snow melts, so that you can get everything out of the way, right? No, let them build. Making them work through the worst of winter would be inhumane. I raised my own hand. Sister Hedwig? When will you be leaving with James? Well, I will be sticking around to administer communion to the new oblates and see they settle in. A week, I'd hazard. Why do you ask? No reason. I could feel eyes burning in the back of my neck. I just want to pray for him, that's all. The bishop nodded sagely. As should we all.
When you want to get off that darkest ground, but gravity pulls you straight down.